As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Rhonda Klch is founder and chief executive officer for EquityFirst. She and her board of advisors founded EquityFirst in 2004, and under her leadership, the firm has grown into a leading provider of personal and business financial solutions. EquityFirst's mission is to help our clients build better financial futures through improved access to credit and financial literacy education. Prior to founding EquityFirst in 2004, Rhonda began her career as a real estate investor and entrepreneur at an early age. During these formative years, her encounters with lending institutions afforded her unique insights into specialized opportunities to assist clients facing challenges related to credit declines, budgeting, and financial hardships. Aiding such clients to achieve their financial goals proved to be rewarding work, and over the past 2 decades, she has continued to commit her efforts to the spread of financial literacy and accessibility as a nationwide keynote speaker and through the development of curriculum for EquityFirst educational programs and workshops. Concurrently, she has led EquityFirst to an expanded sphere of influence through strategic partnerships which play an increasingly pivotal role in the advancement of financial literacy as a cultural norm and the democratization of high-level business knowledge, which creates a more equitable playing field for entrepreneurs at any stage of their journey. Outside of her function at EquityFirst, she actively participates and collaborates with not-for-profits nationwide, including Angels of Long Island, the NFL Super Bowl champ Gary Brown's Dream 68, Victor Green Foundation, Celebrity Sports Entertainment's Philanthropy Division, and others. In addition, Rhonda has been the recipient of numerous awards, accolades, and acknowledgments as a business leader, including Money 2.0, Long Island Business News, Finance and Investing Who's Who, and others. Rhonda is also the founder of Angel Awards, Beach Batch, and Holiday Dreams. Hey, Rhonda, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being here.
I am so excited to be on this side because last time we podcasted together, it was actually to have you on my radio show and podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of fun to be on both ends. I gotta see one end or the other. So it's a great thing. It's just, we're having a chat. Bunch of other people are listening to it. It's all good. So, I met you a few years ago, or I'm sorry, not a year ago-ish. And you have this business thing. You're really good at like one thing in business. And I want you to go into a little bit about what that thing is and what your passion is, because that's really what this podcast is about, is what's your passion?
So, well, passion, I think for me is I think the people that get to know me, I'll say it like that, they know that my passion and my purpose is being a collaborator and helping people to see the bigger picture and to be a resource and the person that they can trust to help guide them to a better, on a better journey, right? Like I'm right there. Now, when somebody says to me, like, what do you do? You're saying, hey, you're so good in business. That's such like a loaded statement because yes, you've seen me speak on stage
Yeah.
and I love educating business owners about the value of business credit and how to scale your business by setting yourself up correctly. But when we're looking at businesses and small business owners, there's so much more depth that goes into the things that I do.
Mhm.
And I think like my superpower is being structured. And I think everything for that entrepreneur comes from we are free spirits, right?
Mhm.
We always want to do what we want to do. But
Uh-huh.
I think for me, my successes have been a direct derivative over how organized and structured I am as a business owner.
Yeah. And that's something that I see, and I'm an advocate for this because, the label ADHD has this really bad connotation to it, but every freaking entrepreneur I know is ADHD.
Oh,
All
yeah.
of them. It's our superpower. And it's something, it allows us to think in 7,000 directions. We're the ones that come up with the really cool ideas and all 7 million really good ideas, usually at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And we really, really need a solid implementer to come in and say, great, you've got 1,000 awesome ideas. You know what? I think they're amazing. Which two do you want to do now? And just help
Not
us collectively keep it together.
It does. And you know what happens is like and the way that my brain works, I have like this gigantic, I guess you can go to like the dollar store, Staples, right? And you get these big oak tag, right? And
Mhm.
I write them down because this is how my brain works. I feel it now? Does it resonate? I let it kind of breathe a little bit. Like if I think of something, a tagline, or I'm thinking about a project I want to work on, I write it down so it becomes real. And then I look at it a few times. And if I keep going back to it, then I go, all right, maybe I'm onto something. And then because how my brain works, because my husband wants to kill me, then I have to say to myself, well, how can I build this into my brand without it making it look like I'm trying to build another business? Right.
Absolutely. And so what has there been anything recently that you've kind of tried to fit into the bit, or that's anything recently you've done?
Oh my God.
Like using that style?
Like, because you're my friend. So we'll talk about the stupid things that I've committed to. No, and I say it in all retrospect. I think as we grow as an entrepreneur, our experiences kind of say, hey, I really feel comfortable doing this. Like you're doing your podcast, which is awesome. You've been a host, you've been a guest, you've been a speaker. So it's natural for you to kind of go into this other thing.
Mhm.
I've been a host of a radio show for almost 4 years. And so what's coming up next? I have the release of a brand new show that's going to be airing again, it's radio for New York and Florida, on ESPN Orlando, AM
Mhm.
and FM, and I was asked to be a host, on a new radio station, and they have me interviewing professional athletes, and it's going to be called the Halftime Report, and the concept is that the first half of the show, we talk all about their career and what they've learned during that period of time that they are now using to implement in what they are doing today. So it's
Interesting.
generally all retired. So nobody knows about that. So this is officially the first time I'm saying it out loud. And then about a year ago, I designed out a program in my head, right? And wrote it down, even bought the domain. I mean, like you just me going crazy, like I'm going to make that happen, but you have to prioritize your time. And that is my series that's coming out called Girl on Fire. And so been sitting on that for a little bit, and it is an entire platform of women empowerment for women in community, not necessarily just in business, but a safe space to talk about things that are happening
Mhm.
to women in the marketplace, maybe to our bodies, right? I'm going through
Mhm.
menopause. Great news, going through menopause. It's giving me a little boost, so I'm getting a little edgy. So I'm kind of liking it. I'm not going to lie. Hormonal imbalances sometimes are working for me, but it's a whole community. So I'm excited because we're going to be doing our first virtual launch with a summit, and that won't be until probably the end of April or beginning of May.
Okay. No, that
The
sounds
things that you
awesome
don't
stuff.
turn off. And I'm trying to wrap it all up into my business. But babe, look at all the amazing women I'm meeting that I can then mentor and coach.
Exactly, exactly. Let's go and make some friends and do some cool shit
Mhm.
with our friends. It's great.
Exactly.
I love doing business that way too. That's one of my personal favorite things about doing business. It's just let's just get a bunch of entrepreneurs in a room and see what we can come up with. And sometimes it's just so cool stuff. So yeah, it sounds like you're doing a lot of awesome, awesome, awesome things. Cool. Well, so I want to go into a little bit of how did you get started? Like, what's your story behind starting your business?
Like, who am I? So
Well,
let's
so part of that, but part of the business too. Like, what did you
we're
do?
bringing it back, right? We're bringing it back. We're dialing it back.
The
So
Wayback Machine.
yeah, the quick I think, like, you need to know where I came from in order to
Yeah,
know where I've gone, right? So,
absolutely.
like, the behind the scenes is, I have always been a creative. I've been always driven by money. I did not grow up wealthy, divorced parents, really had to fend for myself, 14 years old, working, always had a job, whether it was working at, the dry cleaner or at the mall or pulling weeds or babysitting. It didn't matter. I just wanted to make money. When everybody else was being a kid, I wanted to focus on being an adult. So by the time I was 16, I emancipated, not voluntarily. My mother was married to a monster.
Mm,
So I emancipated and moved out and was living independently at 16, continued to go through school, graduated with actually with a business scholarship, and then
mm,
put myself through college. So that's kind of where I came from. It's just, I think you're born to figure out if you're going to be a driver. I'm not afraid to take risk, but I was always a driver. So, from there, put myself through school and I started actually getting involved in business, opened my first business at 18, and then
mm,
started flipping houses by the time I was 23. So, how I got into doing what I'm doing, like you needed to kind of know that because I decided when I started flipping houses, my attorney was like, hey, you should get into mortgages. Mortgages was not really a household word in 1996 when I got started. Bearing in mind, I was 23 years old and 100 pounds soaking wet in a male dominated world. So people didn't look at me as a professional. They didn't look at me as somebody that had life experience. So what I decided to do is I went after an entirely different market. And that was the market that everybody else said no to.
mm,
So if I could breathe life and give you an opportunity, if somebody else said no, but I'm willing to nurture that and figure out what we can do
mm,
to have you find success. I became a financial problem solver at 23 years old for families and people looking to buy their first home or refinance or pull out money to put their kid through college or for a wedding. And in the first year, I made more money than the seasoned men in my industry
mm,
because there's something to be said about giving hope and opportunity.
mhm,
And with that, the market, if we're looking back at timeline wise, the market was a little weird. So eventually the subprime market hit. And then people that worked with me were really not loyal. So in 2004, I incorporated Equity First. And instead of me doing services for clients in lieu of me closing their mortgages, I created my company and we went out and started branding to other people and started working with different companies and attorneys, and we really became a center of influence for a lot of people in the New York community. And when the market crashed, we were 4 years ahead of everybody else working in loss mitigation. So it was a good journey.
yeah.
We did, we did good.
One of the few times when you were in the right place at the right time, and
It
not a whole
was.
lot of people were in the right place at the right time in 2008.
No, and let me tell you, in 2000, when the market really crashed, and you had all these mortgage companies that decided they were going to become loan modification shops,
Mm,
um, that was a major problem because the underwriting was totally different. So, because I had already had so many years of experience, what I did was I branded myself as a train the trainer, and I would go around to the different loan modification companies and law firms nationwide, and I would train their staff because again, if you go back to where we started, I really want to breathe hope and life into anybody, right? That is willing to have me. No, but the idea was like I really want to see people have success. So if you start off on the wrong foot and you take file and you take money, and the reality is that maybe that client's not the right fit, wouldn't it be nice to know now before there's an attorney general complaint?
mm,
So the problem was that most people didn't know how to filter that information. So I would go into these organizations and train them on really the back end operations, mainly from my own successes, and teach them how to filter and how to make sure that they didn't take files that really didn't pass compliance.
mhm. Because from what I worked as a customer service trainer in that industry back then, and from what I
Mhm,
remember, compliance was just like, okay, we don't do it.
mhm.
But so
There was
that point, if
none.
I'm right, they were just writing mortgages. I mean, they would just do whatever they could
Yeah.
to get the business written, and then just it's somebody else's problem once it's done. And I think that's where this really kind of came into it, and where something that you could help out with that, being like, okay, great, now how are we going to pick up the
Yeah.
pieces?
And that was the whole thing. And, I'm so structured with how to put somebody back on a financial, like on a good path of finance. Imagine you buying a home and you took out this crappy mortgage and now you're in default on your mortgage, you're in default in your credit cards, life is horrible. But, I came in giving everybody these action plans and saying, like, let's talk about what this actually looks like. Let's talk about how you have the conversation with your children that your house is in foreclosure because these are such emotional pain points that families were facing during that crisis, that it's not that they didn't want to take accountability, they didn't know where to get started. And that was so hard for them. So we came in and we just created so much structure for the families that we worked with. You know, if you said, I can't afford my new mortgage payment because it ballooned, that's 4,000 a month, but I could afford 2,000, and you're not paying your mortgage at all. We started you on saying, hey, Andy, guess what? We're going to let's save 2 grand a month. And then we're going to start paying off all your credit card debt. So by the time everything happened, you would literally either A, get a loan modification, B, realize that home ownership with where you were was not the right path. But now you have no debt, you have savings, whatever it looked like, we created value and opportunity where they may not have normally have seen any.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
And
think
that's how I got involved in doing my real estate investing.
I love it. And that was something, especially in that era when there were so many people that really should not have had loans.
Yeah.
And when I first learned about a no doc loan, I thought the person had I thought they were crazy or drunk or something like that. When I figured out you just needed a letter from your accountant saying, yes, you have enough money, and that's it.
Yeah.
That was all, no credit check, no
It's,
nothing.
oh, it's
And God,
ridiculous.
yeah. And I think hope was really something people needed at that point because they're like, great, now I'm in the situation. I have no idea what to do. Certainly can't go back to the person that got me here
No.
because they
Well,
were
they
probably out
felt
of
scammed.
business.
They felt scammed because
Yeah.
the average person didn't understand how the loan worked. So that was the biggest thing. And but because of that, when these clients that I was meeting with, if we identified that maintaining that home was not an option for them, call it for what it is. There were just certain families, they had very low interest rates, they were interest only, and now they ballooned. They could not afford another 1,500 a month or $2,000 a month. They were already in default. You know, you had these clients, we said, look, we've identified that we need you to exit. And this is how I started getting involved in the real estate market, because we would go in and short sale the properties for the clients. And I started working with an abundant amount of real estate investors. And when
Mhm.
opportunity presented itself, my husband and I would start purchasing property as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
good old
Absolutely.
times, the good old days.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Think about having lived through them and seen some of it and had more than one conversation about what a balloon
Yeah.
note is to somebody. Yeah, it was a thing. And it
Uh,
was, yeah. Yeah.
And
But
that's how I met Sean Finnegan.
interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's how I
In-
met Sean. Uh-huh.
Now, one of the things that that I'm a big fan of is your network is your net worth. And I'm a huge, the people that you know. So I want to hear the story about like exactly how did you meet him? Because he's a power networker.
How I met Sean. So,
Yeah.
true story. I just got on saying like I was doing some real estate investing. I was working with investors.
Uh-huh.
I develop very intimate relationships with my clients. They're very loyal to me.
Mhm.
And I had a real estate investor that I referred to one of my homeowners that was losing their home. And look, I'm still here for business purposes. So at the end of the day, I still get paid for my service. I
Mhm.
had one of my real estate investors go behind my back to the homeowner and trash me. So that client called me and said, you should never do business with them again because this is what happened and we're loyal to you. Like, because again, it comes from a place of integrity, not desperation. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they contacted me and I was like, are you kidding me? Screw these real estate investors. I could do this myself. I'll just go out and I'll find other people's money and I will just start doing the flips. And no joke, the next day in my inbox is come learn how to flip houses using other people's money. And it was one of Sean's programs. So I went to the meeting and I sat through the 90-minute presentation all about OPM.
Uh-huh.
And for $997, you can join our program and come to our, training session. So I walked to the back of the room like, listen, guy, I've probably done more deals than you. I just need your network of investors for me to pull money from. And
Uh,
he's like, yeah, I can't give that to you. You have to join. I said, here's my credit card. The money's not an issue. I do okay. Like,
uh,
here's your $1,000. I go to the next set of programs and same thing. You sit through the training. I was like, okay, that was okay. Right.
uh,
Um, I could have taught the class, I think, a little bit better. So I didn't network with the people that were in class with me. I networked with my trainer,
Yeah.
right? Who I still to this day talk to. We're still friends on social media.
Nice.
And this is like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years ago. So I literally start communicating with the trainer. I'm like, listen, here's the deal. Like, I already do this many deals. This is who I am, blah, blah, blah. He goes, look, sign up. You should come to Vegas. So I sign up for this program that they're doing out in Vegas. I go out to Vegas and they have like another couple of days of training. We had so much fun. It was a great time. And what landed up happening was I started writing letters to the company saying,
Mm.
hey, here's another one in the books. Here's another one in the books. And I was sending them like all my info. And I got this call saying, hey, would you want to be an ambassador and come out and, talk to other potential students about our program and about who we are and kind of validate a little bit about what that looks like. And that's how I met Sean because it was Sean's company. But what would happen is the big stage events, like where Barbara Cochran or Kevin O'Leary or Dean Graciosi, like, the bigger ones, what would happen is that, Sean and his partners would come to those, would come to those events. And he was like, hey, I heard about you. I'm like, hey, let's chat it up. And he's like, hey, you're like a rock star. And he calls me a rock. Not just me, he calls everybody a rock star, but he's like, hey, rock star. He's like, I really like the way you're thinking. And so every time they were on the East Coast, they would call me and be like, hey, you want to come out? I'm like, yeah, let's have some fun. So I'd go for a couple of days and Sean and I just stayed friends. Like we clicked because we were of like kind. I was not a typical student that was, you know, desperate to flip a deal because I needed that money to pay my rent, right? I was already well-established entrepreneur, business owner, flipping lots of houses a year. I already had my success. So I was one of them. And
Uh,
I'm a grinder, right? Like talking about the name of your show, like I was a grinder. So I'd go there and I'd be like, hey, how do I add value to what you guys are doing?
yeah.
Don't just ask me to speak. How do I add value to the people you're working with? And so Sean and I just created this relationship and we stayed in touch over the years and that's my Sean story.
Yes, I love it. I wanted to hear that story because I want people to really understand that yes, the power of your network is your net worth, and
Yeah.
making key relationships in business, because this is something that Sean's a huge fan of. I'm a huge fan of. A lot of people are. We would create business and we do cool stuff with our friends. And I think it's a different way. Instead of trying to be in a lack mentality where we're like, I just need to make my next payment. I need to make my rent this month. I need to do this. And, take mentality. If you're in that position where you're like, I need to do this, and you're always going to need to do this. If you're out doing cool things with your friends, it's like, oh, by the way, I make money on it. And much more fun and much more attractive, if I'm right.
100%. And I think the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway is any other entrepreneur that is listening to this podcast, it will resonate.
Mhm.
We do business with people we like.
Yeah.
And sometimes we meet people that we like, but we have not yet identified how we can do business.
Mhm.
But because we already have that relationship in time, it will come out in the laundry, right?
Yeah.
So there's always something where the timing may not always be right, but if
Mhm.
you still are consistently working on building your relationships, there will be something at some point, right?
Yeah.
That will come down the road and somebody goes, and you know what? That day is today for you, right? Like
Yeah.
now I finally have something. Like when something comes up and I'm excited, hey, Andrew, I may have a client for you. Like I
Uh-huh.
want to
Yeah.
give back, right? Or, it could be with anybody that you and I mutually know.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love saying, how can I help you? Because then the more you get to learn about that person, the more opportunities you are aware of that align with maybe something somebody's doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And those synergies are something that can create a really powerful force. And that's what I love. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's like, how we met, because we can kind of go into that a little bit at an event
Yeah.
that was a little interesting and it sort of just happened.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to go into that? Do you want to go into how the text from Sean going, hey, can we deal with this?
Yeah.
Or-
So, I'll say Battle Collective was a great concept with a failure to launch because, as I said, like my superpower, I'm super structured, right?
Yeah.
That's how my brain works. That's how I got I requested, I don't want to say dragged in. That's how I was requested, because Sean, first of all, I saw Sean working on a few things. And so I do this. Hey, you realize you don't have any girls in that lineup. And he's like, all right, rock star, I'm picking up what you're putting down. So what happens is that, he calls me to go over at Battle Collective, which was really kind of this brainchild of Sean's and Devin Johnson's. And they have this great, everybody is fantastic. Like, you couldn't ask Sean to have a more dynamic and diverse Rolodex of professionals. So you're pulling people out from left and right, but there's no structure. So I'm the one who is like, responsible for some structure, right?
Yes.
And then we
Yeah.
had the event where I met you, and you were like my instant friend. I was like, oh my God, oh my
Yeah.
God, somebody's here to help me,
And
so,
I-
you just kind of wing it along the way, and
yeah.
that's how our relationship began.
And
And
I just got this random text from Sean going, I want you to introduce you to this friend of mine, Rhonda. And yeah, just
but
kind
you
of
don't
this
even know what that means,
I had
you
no
know?
idea. I had no idea who you were, what you were doing, what
Mhm.
part you played in this thing, what was going on. It's like, I'm just, I'm over here kind of doing, helping however I can. And just, you never know when one of those relationships is going to pay off. And it's not always financial either. It's not always a client
No.
relationship. Times it's just, I'm going to go do some friends. And, like you said, you might know somebody that refers a client to me. I might know if somebody that refers a client to you.
Mhm.
And, we build these relationships of people going, like what Sean says, I know a guy or I know a person. I know someone who can help you to get farther if you were stuck at something. And building those relationships, at least for me, has been absolutely critical. I would not be where I am today without those relationships. And so I think
And
it's a thing.
no, and I agree with you. And I do tell people all the time, because obviously now my business and my company has grown over the years. So
Mhm.
I do a lot of consulting slash coaching work with the small business owner. And one of the first lessons that I go into with my clients is building their power team. Right
Mhm.
now, your industry and my industry and somebody else's might be very different. So our power team might be different. But one of the first things that we focus on is building a power team. And most importantly, it's not always a power team of who we know, it's who we need.
Mhm.
And then we seek the people that we want to work with. And we
Mhm.
create the appropriate messaging to attract the people that we want to work with.
Mhm.
Right? If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh, it
Um,
does.
so it's like you're constantly evolving, and you're like, "Hey, how do you build this business when you don't have the infrastructure or where to go and who to talk to?" And, if it's just an idea and you're a one-man band, how do you grow out of that? Right? And what happens when you have a client problem? Who are you talking to? Who's
Yeah.
helping you through there? Right? So
Yeah.
it's finding and aligning and building your power team. And the power teams are, nothing more than an immediate network of other professionals that you can rely on that are there to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the first things that, like, when I first went into business 7 years ago, that's one of the first things I did was to make sure that I aligned myself with a network of people of what I did. So that way, if things grew beyond where it was, I had people I could pull in going, hey, I've got somebody I can do this. And now I have contractors that do what I do to be able to help for that. Having that support network is, I think,
Mhm.
really critical because we can get really, especially as like a one person organizations, we often get really isolated where we want to do everything for
Mhm.
whatever reason it is. And having, knowing when to pull those people in, I think is incredibly important. And having people around to support when needed. Like we were talking earlier, I hate bookkeeping. Like I cannot put a word strong enough to say how much I hate bookkeeping. I really don't like it. I have a business degree, so it's not like I'm bad at it. I
Yeah.
just don't like
Yeah.
it. And so I don't do it. So
I
therefore,
uh,
it's finding the
look,
people
as
around to support.
I'm not much of a lady, we've had these conversations, but the top 3 things that I hate,
uh,
you know, going to the girly doctor,
uh,
going to the dentist, and getting my books done. Like, I will literally sometimes sit there and go, "Oh my God, I have to go see my accountant. I'd rather go to the gynecologist right now."
yes.
Like, there are
Mhm.
certain things you just don't like to do. And for me, it's so funny is I'm so good with my clients in
Uh,
helping them to be structured and run effectively. I am the shoemaker with no shoes. Right?
yep.
Like,
Yep.
I
Yep.
am the worst where it
Yep.
comes to that. So, yeah, so um, I've just implemented bookkeeping to go across all of my platforms. And then There's just certain things we just don't want to do.
Yeah. And I think I picked that one because I think it's a pretty universal hate.
It is.
I don't think I have never seen someone go, I love bookkeeping, unless you're a
Yeah.
bookkeeper. That's different.
Yeah.
We want
Like, hey, I love paying taxes. You're like, all right, can I write that off? Like, that's all I want to know. I save like, no joke. I'm like literally sitting right now and like, I can pull out like envelopes for you. Like this says, I don't know if you can see it. It says like March 2024. I feel like it's
oh
blind.
yeah. Yeah.
March.
There it
This is me bookkeeping, by the
uh
way. Like everything, like this is me bookkeeping. I literally still old school throw every receipt, every piece of mail that comes in, and it is cataloged by envelope and it's thrown into my filing cabinets, even though everything's still done digitally. Like I am so old school. Like for me, for some reason, that's my blankie.
Yep. Yep. You are not alone. There's a lot of people that like that. Yep.
Like,
Yep.
don't take
Yep.
away my blankie.
Exactly. Right. Right. I need my envelopes, man.
I'm telling you. Mm-mm.
So this has been an awesome chat. I always love talking to you. And I knew it was going to be a good podcast episode. We were going to have a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Before we go, though, I've got one
Yeah,
question for you. And I'm
sure.
doing this with every single guest. What book or podcast has had the most impact for you? Like if you were to recommend for an entrepreneur, what book or podcast would you recommend?
I think and I said this, somebody else just recently asked me, and I don't have the opportunity to read as much as I want to because I'm such a visionary. What
Mhm,
I do is listen to more podcasts. So I
mhm,
don't want to make it singular because what works for me may not work for somebody else. But somebody
mhm,
just asked me this. What I tell people is to dial in to the things that you are trying to emulate and find success there. So for me, there's a gentleman, his name is Ty Crandall, and he runs a company called Credit Suite. And indirectly, they're a competitor of mine, right? Because we do very similar things. But I love listening to his content. It validates often that I'm doing things the right way. He educates me on things that maybe I am not as front of mind to be aware of, right?
mhm,
Because he's so in the thick of it, every day where I'm still doing, business credit and coaching, right? He's just very focused on one particular thing, which is the business credit and business funding. So for me, I follow Ty and I listen to his podcast every time I have opportunity. But what I tell people is figure out who you want to be
mhm.
and follow whoever's already doing what you're doing because chances are they will talk about their failures, which will hopefully save you time, energy, and money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Because we always like to talk. I mean, I saw a picture once of an iceberg and it was posted to show what entrepreneurship is like. And the top part is what everyone sees. And that's the success and the money or whatever it happens to be. It's that iceberg below it, all the things going wrong. Because we've all
Oh,
been. I
hey,
had a
hey,
50,
like
we've done.
my $400,000 over budget bed and breakfast we're building. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
miss structure and miss numbers, and we are way out, like it happens.
Yeah.
Wake up, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no safety net on being an entrepreneur.
No.
You could be a business owner. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're an entrepreneur. There's a big
Mhm.
difference there,
Yeah.
right?
There is.
So again, I think that it is safe to say, at least from where I stand,
Uh,
I make mistakes. So that picture and that image, if you've listened to some of the other speakers as well, like Derek Fay is one of them. Like Derek will talk about, hey, everybody wants to hear about how I made my millions. What I
mhm,
want to share are all of the problems and failures I had
mhm,
until I became successful and learned through my mistakes.
mhm.
Right. And that's what you need to do. So follow the people you want to be like.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for all of that wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Of course, anything for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Rhonda, check out the link in the description. You can also check out her radio show on Long Island Public Radio.